Good morning, everybody. Happy Monday. Um, I was thinking over this last weekend in kind of what's been led up to what's going on in our world and environment. And the word that keeps popping in my head is change. And when people go through change, it's really hard. It's hard because of this uncertainty. It's hard because of kind of the unknown. It's hard because you don't know what to do, how to do it, and it just makes things very difficult as leaders when we um, embrace change, see change, have change come. But in today's environment, this is kind of a forced change that none of us planned. Nobody planned that we were going to have the virus and what it's done, and how now that it's growing in certain areas and it's shrinking in other areas, and what do we do and how do we do it, and how do we manage through this kind of crazy tumultuous time of being slapped with change in your face when you didn't ask for it, don't want it, but now all of a sudden it's significant. It also reminds me of on September 11th, 2001, TSA didn't exist. And we all know today, almost 20 years later, um, how much of our lives have changed because of 9/11. And even mentioning the word 9/11, it now has its own definition of what it means in your own head. And now that what we're going through in our environment today, how how is it going to change long term? And nobody knows that answer. And so then you start asking the question, well, when do we do this? And when do we do that? And when is it okay to do this? And when is it okay to do that? And how we walk through and see each one of these pieces of our lives and how they're evolving. I think the better question is, instead of defining the word win for everything, because the wins are unknown. Well, we can open and do this now, or we can not have to wear masks and do this now, and we have to have social distancing of X. And it's all been kind of, we're following the leader on how it's being described. And you're seeing this very significant polarizing perspective on people that feel very strongly this way, people feel very strongly this way. And it's created a tremendous amount of tension, and reading it on social media every day now, and people expressing their opinion, and this opinion that they're expressing is very heartfelt to them, but it's the typed word, not the spoken word. So it's real difficult. And how, what is the intent, or the inflection behind the person that's speaking, that's giving a particular position on a topic. But I think back to what I said a minute ago about this being a time of defining how versus when. So let's talk about that. Let's talk about how we make decisions, and then that will then dictate of when the win will happen. So it's interesting. So if you think about it for a minute, and you wrap your head around how I'm going to define going out to lunch today. So I'm going to go out to lunch today, and I want to be respectful of social distancing. I want to be in an open space, so I'm not having real tight quarters with really anybody else. I want to be aware of my surroundings, that if I do use the restroom, of not touching handles, and being very careful with my hands. I want to be conscious that I don't touch my face. So now I'm describing the what, and I'm describing the how, as opposed to the when. So as I'm going through of describing how I'm going to go about this today, I know what I'm going to set in place, how I'm going to greet the person that I'm having lunch with. I'm going to fist bump them, or we'll touch elbows, or we'll just kind of wave and sit down and have our conversation, and have a meal, and then be reminded of all these things of how I'm going to do and manage my activities. And then that dictates the win in this particular situation, which makes it me sound not novel at all, but by the mere fact that you processed all these things that you're going to do, you've now defined the how as opposed to the when. And I think it makes it much easier if you can do it that way. I mean, I may say, well, gosh, you're rambling because you're talking about this nebulous stuff. But in reality, all this nebulous stuff all kind of packaged together really, quite honestly, creates an environment for you to get through what it is that you're having difficulty in defining the when. So as you make decisions this week, think about how, and think about when, and think about doing things and measuring those results as opposed to thinking about having to say, what is the win behind things. So have a super week this week, and we'll see you next week. Take care.